Okay, I told you guys that I was going to do a video on the practical outcomes for 2018, what it will mean for the next few years, instead of a metaphysical or not metaphysical meta-analysis of it, which was the first video. This is the second half, which is a much more practical analysis. This first part is going to be probably because I am a white male who is a heterosexual who wants to have children, who is not married right now. This is blackpilling. I think the takeaway from it is women running for these congressional seats, and that they're able to sway. I don't have the numbers yet, but they were able to sway women in the middle, which millennials do not have very many children right now. Historically speaking, they don't have any children. Housing rates are very expensive. They're not getting married. Mandatory education, all that stuff that's making it so they're having delayed marriage. They're not moving out. They're not living communally because, dude, weed, laugh my ass off, let's sit around, smoke weed. That's what we're gonna do if you don't move out of your parents' house and you live communally. Sit around, smoke weed, play video games. Pretty cool, I guess, if you're a man. But we discovered that I think that a lot of the reason why they gained is because of these women. And you get into this point where they've discovered by, I think, accident through Trump's private life that having false race accusations are very profitable for single white women, to get them to turn to the polls. Maybe non-voting, non-white women, very profitable to get them to the polls that way. Because we saw it with Trump, of course. It was insane. It was like 15 false rape accusations. And then we saw Roy Moore. Now we saw Brett Kavanaugh. And we're going to see this in the future. And I think, in a way, the concept of the Brett bounce, that actually helped them. I really do think, especially in states with close Senate elections, where it was a Democrat that was incumbent, that really helped them in the Senate. That they really do think that Brett Kavanaugh is a gang rapist because of the conditioning for the independent single women who want to have them as their surrogate children, non-whites as their surrogate children, if they don't already have cats, and now increasingly dogs. And disturbing analysis, we're going to get a house, move from the apartment because we need more room for our dogs in the backyard because I'm a dog mom. They're really using blacks and illegal aliens and all these non-white hordes as surrogate children, which is very disturbing. Okay. So now that Trump actually has a firm control of the Senate, you see, the Senate was, what was it, 59-49 in terms of, party caucus identity before, but caucasoid identity, caucus. I'm so bad. I'm sorry, you guys. Identity, and now it's going to be like 54-46 or something like that. Maybe 55-45. I gotta check it again. Republicans gained Florida, Missouri, Indiana, and North Dakota, while only losing Nevada in the Senate. And because Jeff Flake left, John McCain died. Before, it really was 3 purples, 49 Democrats, 49 Republicans. Now it is 1 purple, 54 Republicans, and 45 Democrats. Because I'm counting the guy in West Virginia, I don't have his name right now, as a purple. And I counted the 2 senators from Arizona as purple votes, which made it so that Trump couldn't really get the best people passed for heading his departments as the executive. Now, with 54 Republicans, 1 purple that can vote on his side, we're going to see him going to appoint better people to head the executive departments. And we already saw this. Jeff Sessions resign. Now, if he'll go to the DHS and replace that dumb bitch, or what he's going to do, we'll see. But is an interesting development. Hopefully, he will appoint Buchananites or ideologues or something like that. Because the reality in these institutions is you don't need specialists, because it's really decisions that you're making. You're not deciding policy that much. It helps, but you need people more than people that know what they're doing. You need people that are loyal, because he is up against the magisterial state. Because the United States government is really a giant iceberg. The Congress and the president are at the top above the water. The Supreme Court is kind of like the water itself that guides the iceberg, but the magisterial state is a giant iceberg underneath it, which decides the fate of the United States. Speaking of which, the water deciding the tilt of that iceberg, we'll see what happens with this new Supreme Court with Kavanaugh. And God help us, it is statistically probably 1 1/4 that Ginsburg at least dies, not alone is forced to retire before 2020, let alone if Trump gets a second term, when you're looking at 2 replacements, statistically speaking, of Breyer and Ginsburg. And you could have Republican retirements. So that will change drastically the critarchy and how that forms. And we might see a great challenge to the critarchy with pro-life amendments to give personhood to actual babies. You know, babies that are living inside the mothers, of course. But we'll see how that goes. I don't know how it goes. And that goes back to the beginning. It can potentially be bad for winning. And I mean, religiously and morally speaking, that's a very good thing. But when you have women and you have a low birth rate, and women are starting to identify themselves, white women are starting to identify themselves as a race in the terms of gays identifying themselves as a race or an ethnic group. Now single white women identify themselves as a race or an ethnic group and are voting for their interest, even though they wouldn't even have an abortion, because they're not even most of them aren't even in the position to have an abortion, but they see some kind of solidarity with all the other thoughts. And that is problematic, and that will hurt them. That will hurt the Republicans if they do gain this victory. And you can see why they never tilted towards that victory. At the same time, it gives them a wide base, right? So this is one of those things where people say democracy is completely worthless, because it's antithetical for them to actually go through. They'll lose more voters if they actually do what the pro-life wants. If they abandon the pro-life, then they lose voters. So the Republican parties, the Republican movement's initiative is never to act on restraining abortion. It is always to keep in place so that they can have the most amount of voters and have the least amount of voters turned off from single Wymans. Now, what do I think that a House barely controlled by the Dems is going to result in? They may pull up. They're going to shut down the government. It might shut down for 2 or 3 days, but I think, I'm not 100%. I'm not going to say this is 100% going to happen, but like 60, 70%. They're going to shut down the government over DACA. And if they shut down the government over DACA, right, they're not fighting for health care, really. They're fighting for more voters in the form of DACA. And that's explicitly racial. Like, if the Democrats mainly go about amnesty, that's so funny. But again, they'll just lie to people during the elections and say that they want, to help the unions, and they want to give you better health care, and they want the mandatory schooling, which they should combat. They shouldn't give you free college. They should find other ways around that so you don't have to go to school, because college is becoming a second high school. And high school and college are both being dumbed down to what they previously were, regardless of affirmative action and less intelligent people being there, just by the amount of people alone that are coming in. They won't find a solution for that, because Trump has forced them, into a sense, to become racialized. And it's sad, because the NPC thing is happening, where people are voting explicitly against their racial interests because they'll just lie and say they're for healthcare. Now, obviously, as an ASBL, I want a single-payer healthcare. I'm very, very pro-union and stuff like that, right? I'm very, very pro-government intervention in various fields, economically speaking, and in the United States at the current level. I do support that. But the Democrats don't. The Democrats are increasingly become the capitalist party that they're going to be. They're fighting for the donors of these internet sites which are censoring us. You know, Google, Apple, you know, tech is going to be their base, and they're going to be very free market for that. And the Republicans are going to become a more socialistic party just by, if the Republicans just maintain their ground, they will be. It would be smarter for them to have some kind of solution to the problems with mandatory college, whether they're horrible, like trying to forgive student loans in some kind of way, or becoming more protections, becoming more labor union. That will actually really help them, and I would want them. But because they're primarily, they get money through Jewish bankers and stuff like that, Cato Institute, you know, the Koch brothers, Reason Magazine, all that shit is completely astroturf, but that's what gives them money. If you look at it, libertarianism as an ideology has so much more spent on it than, you know, evangelical Christians and stuff. But despite how much money that they spend on libertarianism, it is not tilting the Republican Party considerably towards libertarianism because it's the most astroturf ideology in history. Sorry for that deviation. They will shut down the government one way or another if it's over DACA. I do not think that anything will get through. If anything really gets through, it will be to continue the budget, which will not be, you know, deficit hawked. My tongue's fucked up. Down. They're going to just extend it to prevent a government shutdown, and they might get infrastructure passed. I don't think the wall is coming at this point, unless if he can get the wall through the military. And what might be hilarious is meddling with the military. They might change the budgets on the military for some weird reason, just to fuck with the country, the Dem-controlled House. Are they going to get through and try to impeach Trump? I don't know. But if they do, they're going to try it like the Republicans did Obamacare. And that will fuck up the government. It is going to be a complete shutdown because they're radicalized to the point. The Republicans are not radicalized to this point, but Democrats consider Republicans will be friends with Democrats. Democrats will not be friends with the Republicans. Let's put it like that. And they will go to insanity to try and impeach Trump despite having no ability to get through. And that will make the government essentially worthless. And they may shut down the government by accident. I mean, one of these things we're looking at by accident of how dysfunctional the government is Disney would bribe the federal government to pass laws to prevent Steamboat Willie from ever going into the public domain. So the public domain would never extend, so you have stuff like, you know, all these pulp magazines are like half of Lovecraft's work is in public domain, half of it isn't, half of Edgar Rice Burroughs' work is in public domain, you know, half of it isn't, it's just stuck at 1923, never moves forward. We never get to sound movies going into the public domain. Public domain will move forward because nothing is going to be passed through the House. Disney is not even going to be able to keep Steamboat Willie at this point from entering public domain, which is fucking hilarious to me. And it's dark because kind of the thing you're looking at is because of the American system of checks and balances. I don't think Brazilification in terms of we're just going to become anti-whited and they're going to build the anarcho-tyranny state of San Francisco slowly up. It's going to be collapsing. The infrastructure is going to be collapsing because Republicans, despite demographically being doomed presidentially, will block the Democrats in the Senate for a very long time and have hoped for 10 to 20 years. And in this 10 to 20 years, the country will deteriorate rapidly. And it gets kind of scary where you're looking at truly what I said before, military coup or civil war. Now we'll see. May you live in interesting times.